Good day, everyone. Wanted to bring a perspective on something that is actually going around the nation at this point, and that has to do with the topic of abortion. There's a big discussion about the possible reversal of Roe versus Wade. And as we know, Roe versus Wade essentially has to do with giving rights to a woman to be able to go through the process of abortion. This law has been able to divide the country of United States. In so much so that it's now classified as a right versus left issue, conservative versus liberal. It's a talking point that for some, even based upon their lifestyle, though it be completely not in accordance with conservative principles, if they agree on one point in regards to not wanting the ability or the freedom to have an abortion, if they agree on that, it doesn't matter what their lifestyle is otherwise. It almost seems like this is the most important of all the issues that one would consider as a tenet of being a conservative. Now, I want to be very open. And so the first thing I want to let you know is that I'm a person that does not believe in abortion. Now, while I say I don't believe in abortion, and I do support organizations that help young women and men from not having to go down that route, but choosing life, I would say that that's a passion of mine. But not only is that a passion and it stops there. You see, if you believe in life, then in addition to helping to support a child being born, you also should be willing to support the child being sustained. And I'll be honest with you, many of my cohorts who share the same desire or passion in regards to saving life don't share the same desire to sustain life. And there are many examples. You find that many will speak out against the social services. They look down at the people who are in need, regardless of what the circumstances is, and they blame those who have made an abuse of the system and generalize it to everyone. You have to ask yourself, when you look at the life of Jesus, Jesus healed 10 lepers. Only one came back and said thank you, but yet still he healed all 10. What's the relevance? Well, you may have 10 people who are signed up for welfare because of the circumstances of having, let's just call it unwanted kids. And, we was able to convince them to have the kids. All right? So unwanted kids. And so here they are with the unwanted kids, and they're using the system to sustain the kids. And sometimes they don't even do a good job. They sustain themselves more. If you are like Jesus, hey, you will not sacrifice the one because the 9 was not in need or did not appreciate or don't see eye to eye. So definitely there are things that, is not necessarily kosher with the whole process. But we have the passion. We have the passion to sustain life. Now, as I mentioned, I am a proponent of life. Now, there are circumstances, of course, which will change the reasoning behind doing something. And let me see if I can explain that. Well, as a Christian, we don't believe, or I don't believe, in taking life. The Bible says, thou shalt not kill. But you find that if you ask many of the same people who consider themselves to be religious, you find they have no problems with stuff like the death penalty. If you actually analyze that, you'd have to ask yourself, well, what am I doing when my desire is to see someone die or put to death? Am I a pro-life in one aspect and then pro-death in another? You see, there are certain things that we refuse to actually think about and grapple with. And the problem with it is that it ends up making us hypocritical to a person who is looking at us objectively. Why? What I've seen in my time working with groups that do all we can to help a person in an unwanted pregnancy situation to be able to bring the child to term and deliver. The reality is that most of those children are your brown and black kids. And let's say you have a black boy who you've saved. He grows up to be a teenager or a man, walking down the street and all of a sudden being shot or killed. Let's say they're innocent and they're shot by a cop or just an unfortunate situation. You find that there's less sympathy now by the same folks who helped to bring that child to life. Less sympathy. To the point where sometimes I said, it's amazing. Here we are. When I look at what's going on, here we are saving a child to later on to become a target practice. And the sentiments of those who have put out all in the beginning is not expressed at the end. The other thing that's interesting is that when I consider the people who go through the process of having an abortion, I have never met, and I don't think that there is much, if any, who actually willfully go into the act of procreation to use abortion as their means of contraception. Why is that important? Because the devil has created this argument regarding abortion, where even though the majority, if not all, will agree that abortion is not an appropriate means of contraception, we argue about the right to be able to do it. I've been listening to some of the tenets on both sides. One side is very passionate about, not doing it because of the fact that it's killing, and they will cry. Here you are killing a little child, and the child is a human, even at a few weeks old, the heartbeat. You can hear those things, and we're passionate about that. And when you look at many of the people who are passionately speaking about it, and actually look at their lifestyle, walking around with big guns that have no need in a peaceful society. And even if there was a war going on, if you're truly godlike, you would tend to want to do everything to not have to fight, to not have to kill. You do like the Bible says, turn the other cheek. You not be one that says, I'm going to stand my ground. The Bible says, if they do this, pray for them, turn the other cheek. But we have a side that will stand their ground. We have a side that shows no compassion when innocent people are killed based upon their color or based upon what part of the border they are. If they're on this side, well, it's one thing. If they're on the other side, then it means nothing. And then you have the other side. When I was listening to some of the conversation, the other side, I hear people standing that, oh, we are taking away the rights, and the rights will affect even our children, and almost like our children's children, their rights. I'm saying to myself, well, if you go to the process which you are fighting to keep, then you won't have children and children's children to deal with, because, hey, they may be aborted. And so when you open up and actually think of actually what the argument is, you realize that we have been caught up discussing something that comes from the devil. There is no right when arguing something that the devil himself puts up. As a Christian, the only thing I can do is stay out of that argument. Why? Because when I read the Bible, like Deuteronomy 30, Deuteronomy verse 30, and start from verse 18. Actually, I'll start from verse 19. It says, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursing. Therefore, choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. Deuteronomy 30, verse 19. God says, choose life. So I'm choosing life. However, if you look at what it says here, there's another aspect to it. God says, I've given you a choice. From the time God created man, there's a choice given. The Garden of Eden was perfect. But you put one thing in the midst of the garden called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And that tree, he says, listen, do not eat of that tree, because if you eat of it, you will surely die. So God is a God who says, choose life. But he's also the God who gives you choice. Where am I going with that? If God gives you choice, who am I to take it away from you? Now you may say, the consequence of that choice is death, because you're actually choosing to kill the unborn. I would say to you that that choice is not something that is new to this generation. When you go through the Bible, you realize that from the beginning, Cain killed Abel. Well, they were adults, if you want to say. But as you continue, you realize that there were gods, Molech, for instance, who parents would take their children and bring and offer it as a sacrifice. If you remember the story of Moses, Moses was saved from death. They were killing children. If you remember the story of Jesus, the reason he left Bethlehem and went to Egypt to hide out was because of the decree to kill children. What is my advice then? When you look at the left, they've made their choice. Their choice is not, for the most part, to stay in accordance with biblical principles. Now, the left is really far left. Why? Because as I mentioned before, that I don't see anyone who is going into having a relationship with the thought process that abortion is what they're going to use for their contraception. And so when we create this scenario around the action of abortion, the devil has us fighting. And what it does, it points out all the hypocrisy of the right. The right, they're involved in doing abortion just the same. I think there was a senator who was, caught, when they checked the history of going through the process. They see you running with big guns, knowing that, if given the opportunity, you will take a human life, and you have. They see you talking about all you want to do to prevent abortion, and yet still you'll do all you can to prevent the sustenance of the one who was saved from abortion. The devil has us on either side. Remember, God gives us choice. He says, I put before you life and death. Choose life. Be godly. This separation that you're currently seeing has nothing to do with righteousness. Nothing to do with righteousness. You never heard Christ crying out about the conditions that even his birth caused, as that of the execution of children. As a matter of fact, the Bible tells us about the weeping that would occur because of the loss of children in certain situations. Thank you for listening. Don't get passionate about the things that you see. God says that these things will happen. Thank you.